Welcome to the show, sports fans. This is the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. It is another edition of the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. I don't know if I played that or was it a different intro, Logan? I wasn't paying attention. Was it the Treasure Valley?
You know what? I wasn't paying attention either.
You know what? Just to be safe, I'm going to play it one more time. They're all stacked in a line here.
That's hilarious because I wasn't paying attention either. So
all right, here we go. Take two.
Could be East Idaho. Who knows?
Yeah, that's what I think I hit. So let me double check.
Welcome to the show, sports fans. This is the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
Okay, now welcome in. This is the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. Brandon Baney, as always, joined by Logan Green. If you are listening to the audio-only version of this podcast, then you won't notice anything different or out of the ordinary. You can download this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, etc., Apple. And it's easy to just subscribe to the podcast, and then it automatically gets downloaded into your feed every time we do a new episode. You can also listen on our website, IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, there's a little tab that says Prepcasts, little drop-down menu, and you can see all of our Prepcasts there. If you're watching the video version of this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page, you're only going to see Logan today. I'm having webcam issues. By the time we do this again next week, though, Logan, they should be back and everybody will be subject to my face. So
this is better, I think. I think it's better this way, Brandon.
Yeah, an improved product for sure. So you're just going to get the blank black screen with the default avatar here for me as we do our boys basketball preview extravaganza. Logan, boys basketball started in earnest really in the middle of last week. Some teams started super early, like on Monday, but for the most part, most teams have played about 3 games to this point. So this is a good time for us to kind of break down who we think is going to excel, players to keep an eye on, and maybe some early season results.
Yeah, and what I like about basketball, especially early, is you get those cross-state matchups that you don't usually see in football. We saw a little bit in football this year. That was an added bonus, I think, at least at the 5A level. We saw most of the SIC teams play somebody from Eastern Idaho just to kind of, get that cross-state. And I think it was good to have that. And we've already seen that this year in basketball, right? We've seen a couple teams from over here. I think Timberline and Middleton both went over to Pocatello last weekend and played a couple games in Pocatello. So it's nice to see the mix already getting going and teams playing from teams in the other part of the state. And that kind of gives us a basis of, maybe where we'll see things lay out towards the end of the year and where they might fall early in conference play. But I mean, conference play still on the horizon for most teams doing these out of conferences and these tournaments, but there's still a few teams that haven't even tipped off yet. So it's still like very a little scattered right now.
Yes, and they're in the Treasure Valley. Some teams haven't been able to play. Games have been postponed and moved around. Not a ton, but some have. There's like an official shortage over there in the Treasure Valley, right? Or there's some problems with officials in terms of they're not very happy about a couple of things, and it's impacted the schedule just a little bit. Nampa in particular, I think, is itching to get going, but Coach Brad Adolphson's Nampa squad hasn't been able to yet because he's had a couple of games get moved around. So
yeah. And you know what? There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of Eastern Idaho versus Treasure Valley type discussions among people, right? And Eastern Idaho kind of shut everybody up for football. But I think basketball, we're going to see the reverse, right? I think basketball is definitely where, especially at the 5A level, the SIC is just dominant. I mean, last year, there's always the grumble about the disproportionate amount of teams maybe that get in from the SIC versus the rest of the state. But at the end of the day, 4 of 4 at 5A were in the semifinals at the 4A level. And you know what? You look at it this year, and the 5A SAC is just loaded once again.
Yeah, if we look at the preseason coaches poll, Owyhee picked as the favorite, and I think that's probably well earned. They're the defending 5A state champs. And then you've got in order Eagle at number 2, Mountain View 3, Timberline 4, Meridian 5, Centennial 6, Rocky Mountain 7, Boise 8, Middleton 9, Capital 10, Bora 11, Cuna 12, Nampa 13. That's a lot to digest, I know. And you can find all of these preseason coaches polls on our website, IdahoSports.com. We did it for every conference in the entire state. Let's just start right at the top, though, with Owyhee. They lost Jack Payne to Colorado State. They lost Max Saavedra, who transferred to Rocky Mountain. But otherwise, pretty much everybody's back. So
yeah, I mean, you look at their roster. Andy Harrington, looking for his 3rd state championship in a row, right? He won it at Middleton, then he goes over to Owyhee and wins it there. He's one of the best coaches in the state, right? To continue to do what he does. And this team is young. That's the thing. Like, they're not even going to be a problem this year. They're going to be a problem next year, just already, right? I mean, you look at who they have: Liam Campbell, Jackson Rasmussen. Like, these guys were great players last year who are just going to be back again next year. And so you like what you see there. They also have a new incoming player from Skyview, Jace Allen, who's just going to add to that young mix. He's only a sophomore, and it's hard to see anybody topping Owyhee right now.
Yeah, Liam Campbell's got multiple offers from Pac-12 schools, Stanford, USC, Washington State. As a UCLA fan, I'm like, hey, what are we doing, guys? we should put an offer in. Yeah, seriously. Rasmussen was a great football player, and now is getting acclaim in basketball. You mentioned Jace Allen, the transfer from Skyview. He started as a freshman last year for a Hawks team that was competing in the 5A SIC. Let's not forget, Skyview did move down this year, but he was a 5A SIC point guard last year as a freshman. So yes, Owyhee's still the overwhelming favorite. But if we remember last year, they were pushed by Eagle. There was was it 4 overtimes? That 4 overtime thriller right before Christmas last year?
Yeah, and Eagle won that game.
Yeah.
And you know what? Eagle is a team that they did go 2-0 at state last year, and they did lose a key piece in Donovan Jones, but you know what? They've picked up some really good pieces. I mean, Sawyer Hansen came from Middleton over there, and he's a big guy down low that's going to cause problems. And size is something that's just not abounding, right? Timberline has size, and now Eagle does, and you've got to have some size down low, and I think that will be a problem for other teams to match up with, is the size that Eagle has with Hansen. And then of course Middleton lost Michael Day to go down to New Mexico, and so they lost a big man down low that was very, and Tyler Medeiros has gone from Middleton. So just looking at some players around the conference and how it's shifting and how the size is different, and you look and you say, a couple big guys are gone, a couple big guys have shifted, and will that make a difference in conference play?
Yeah, I think it definitely will. So, yeah, you talk about Hansen, who transferred into Eagle. Landon White is back for the Mustangs. Hudson Van Alphen is a great guard for Eagle, and he's gotten a lot better in the summer from what I've heard as well. So, Eagle was picked second in the preseason poll, and I would kind of tier it, Owyhee in a tier of their own.
Yes.
And then in the next tier, I think it's these next 4 teams: Eagle, Mountain View, Timberline, Meridian. I think all of those teams are capable of getting to state, playing for a state championship. We talked about Eagle. Timberline, you mentioned, has got all the size, right? AJ LeBeau is the biggest guy in the conference.
Right. And LeBeau, he's got some D1 offers out there as well. And I think he got one to Army, and I don't know who else he's got, but he's got a couple of academy offers, I believe. But yeah, they're going to be a problem down there, and it's just hard, Basketball has shifted, though. It has shifted to the guard game. That just seems like what's going on in college basketball. You just don't have a big man, but Thanksgiving's a great time to watch a lot of basketball. I know people say it's watch football on Thanksgiving, but personally, I grew up in North Carolina, so basketball is. And I grew up in Durham, right where Duke is. So basketball is We watch a lot of basketball. And Thanksgiving's great. And so I'm an NC State fan. I know it's bad. It's been a rough life. I think they sold their soul for that 1983 national championship, and I don't get to witness anything else from it. But they had a big guy, and the guard play is good, but when you can go down, and so many teams watching college basketball did not have a big guy down low, and they couldn't get the points in the paint when they needed to. If the guards aren't making shots, what are you going to do? And so you got to be able to have the big guy down low. And so I think that's where a Timberline and an Eagle, they've got that big size down there. And if it's an off night from the outside, they can go down low and get it done inside. So I think that makes them dangerous in that second tier. I probably put Eagle at the top step of that tier and then Timberline right below them. I think that those are going to be your top three, personally. Owyhee, Eagle, and Timberline. But the conference is loaded, Brandon. Like you said, I mean, there is so much here. I mean, you look at Centennial is picked 6th in the preseason, and they went on a run to the state championship last year. And heck, they were in that game with Owyhee. It's not like they got run out of the building, right? They were competitive with it. And so you look around and you say, man, it's just, there's a lot of good players in the conference. There's a lot of good teams. You move in Middleton from the 4A level, who they did lose pieces. They lost 3 key guys, but that's a team that won a championship 2 years ago. That's a team that was 25-3 last year. There's just a lot of good teams in the conference, and there's going to be teams that are going to be left out this year that are very good. That's just the way it's going to shape out.
Yeah. So yes, in that second tier, we talked about Eagle, we talked about Timberline. They've got LeBeau, who committed to Washington State, so he's going to go play for the Cougars in the Pac-12. They've also got a great point guard in Blake Keesow, so Timberline's got a nice 2-man game going there. Mountain View lost their best player, Nate Ojukwu. He's at a prep school in Florida now. He wants to elevate his game, so he went out of state. But Mountain View and head coach John Nettleton, he's been there forever, so they've got a good system in place. Same with Meridian. Jeff Sainer, of course, won the title with Meridian 2 years ago. They've just got athletes from that football team that are now playing basketball, Zeke Martinez, etc. So all 4 of those teams are going to be pretty good. The next tier, I'd call it tier 3, Logan, and you touched on a couple of teams in it already. I'd say Centennial, Rocky Mountain, Boise, Middleton are all kind of in the next tier of teams that are capable of being dark horses in the conference, possibly getting to state. Centennial lost almost everybody from last year. They do bring back Hayden Fletcher. He's a 4-year starter now for the Patriots. Rocky's got their third different coach in 3 years. Brian Sweeney is now going to coach them, and Tegan Sweeney, we saw what he did in football. He'll lead Rocky there. Boise's got one of the most underrated coaches in the state in Manny Varela. He just every year has the Brave competing for state tournament appearances. And then Middleton's kind of the big question, right? They're making the jump up from 4A. Nate Hartman in his second season leading the Vikings. They've got, I think, one of the better point guards in the league, Talmadge Stuckey. But the question is, who's that second banana for Middleton this year?
Yeah, and that's where I don't know where that piece is yet for them. They've got a couple of kids that moved up from JV that are now playing. I mean, they beat Ridgevue early on, and then they went on the road, had a tough one at Highland. I think that one went to overtime. And then they played Century the next day. So I think them and Timberline also did the same thing. They switched, who played Highland and Century, and I think Bishop Kelly as well. Bishop Kelly played Preston. Anyway, so they played some Eastern Idaho teams, had a good showing. Century, a good team from a year ago, and they were able to beat them. They beat Ridgevue. Of course, those are 4A schools. But we'll see. I mean, I just, like I said, Brandon, I think it's so clogged that you're going to lose a team in the mix.
Definitely. And then in the last tier, I would put the bottom 4 teams that are kind of trying to find their way and find their new identity, and maybe they can jump into the top half of the league standings by the end of the year. But that would be Capital, Bora, Kuna, and Nampa. Each of them have, outstanding players and great coaches. Blas Teleria back at Capital doing a fantastic job getting that thing turned around. They're led by David McNamara. You've got, we talked about Kuna is a team that lost a lot of its production last year when Gavin Gordon graduated. Bridger Allen, Gus Austin, a couple of guys to keep an eye on for the Cavemen. Nampa, like Middleton, making that jump up to the 5A classification. They've just got good athletes. Gabe Navarro, is going to lead that squad. Brad Adolphson is the head coach there at Nampa. And then for Bora, veteran coach Jeremy Dennis. I think Bora is the team that's best positioned to challenge, the top half. Ryan Willoughby very quietly had a great season last year for the Lions, and he's back along with Lance Anderson.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully some of those teams can challenge. I think it makes the conference better when people are good. Obviously it does. That's a stupid comment, but hopefully we can see some of these teams make that step up and be a little bit better. And I think we will. I think the conference is so loaded right now that it's going to be fun to see who shows up, who steps up, who challenges. Again, like we said, Owyhee probably in a class of their own. But there is a second level that I think that there's a couple of teams that could enter that second level and make a push. And you know what? The second level is not a bad place to be. Look at Centennial, right? Just get to the dance. You never know what can happen once you get there.
That's right. So as we move to the 4A Southern Idaho Conference now, unlike 5A, where there was an overwhelming favorite in Owyhee, there wasn't really these ballots that the coaches sent back were kind of all over the place. Really 1 through 5 were all very tight in terms of total votes. So Bishop Kelly was picked 1 in the preseason coaches poll, Ridgevue 2, Skyview 3, Columbia 4, Valley View 5, Caldwell 6, Emmett 7. And I think that top 5, BK, Ridgevue, Skyview, Columbia, Valley View, any of those 5 could emerge. This is a conference to me that's wide open.
Yeah, and it's tough to have seen what's happened in the season to start. These teams, a lot of them have played some out-of-conference games. I mentioned Bishop Kelly went over to the eastern side and played Preston and got beat pretty handily there, and Pocatello also took care of business. St. Valley View got beat pretty good by Preston last week. And so I'm worried, Brandon, that we're going to see the same thing we saw with football. I mean, Bishop Kelly did make a run at the state championship, but how good is the conference compared to the rest of the state? That's my worry, at least on a statewide level. But on a conference level, I think it's going to be a fun conference to be a part of. And like you said, you mentioned Ridgevue, maybe making a mix, getting into the mix. I mean, in Valley View, went to state last year. They upset Middleton in the tournament, and they were a problem. I mean, that Jace Martinez is back for them, and he's always, when he's on, he's on. Valley View can compete and beat people. Doesn't matter where they are. I mean, look at, I think it was 2 years ago, Preston or Valley View had something, they played in that Middleton Christmas tournament, something like that, and had been, to be honest, really bad. Had gotten beat by a lot of teams by deep 20, 30 points. And then Preston came over and Valley View beat them. And so they're a team that sometimes starts a little slow and then gets going. That's just what, if you're just going based on history, that has happened recently, where Valley View has just gotten off to a slow start and then really turned it up and beaten some of the best teams in the state. And so Valley View, we talk about in football, they're just always a pesky team that won't go away, right? They're going to be in the mix. And Ridgevue got some new players coming in that also can make an impact. And I think you're going to see, with Middleton gone, they had been the top dog for so many years, right? Where it was Middleton and then who else? And this year, more teams are going to have that opportunity to take the next step here.
Yes. Right now, the 4A SIC, Logan, has 3 wins and 13 losses as a league. They are 3-13 overall. And we mentioned maybe on a statewide level, District 3 isn't quite there with some of the other conferences, but there's that potential for somebody to emerge and develop. BK got the nod as the preseason favorite. I think just based on, the past, they've pretty consistently been a good team. Rakeem Johnson is one of the guys to keep an eye on there. He was a great offensive tackle for that BK offensive line in football this year. He's a big 6'3", 6'4" kid. Ridgevue's got good size, 4 players that are 6'4" or taller. They've got Ashton Eaton, a senior point guard who transferred in. I'm not sure where he transferred from, but they're pretty excited about what he can bring to the table. You mentioned Valley View. Head coach Mario Betancourt, I think, is another underrated coach.
Oh, yeah.
Skyview, to me, is the big question mark, right? Skyview moving down to 4A. We thought in football that would help them, but it really didn't. They really struggled. I'm just not sure what to make of Skyview. Eloy Chaparro is going to be their top guy. And then Columbia is the team. The one thing that every coach had pretty much in lockstep was the best player in the conference, the player of the year, is going to come from Columbia, and it's Jack Keller. The question is that can somebody else step up for second-year coach Dom Fear and the Columbia Wildcats?
Yeah, and Columbia is a team that was very good 2 years ago, right? I mean, they were right in there. They were making noise. They were, I think, number one in the state at one point. And you know what? They can get back there. I think that they're a team that has been there recently, has been there, done that. And they can make an impact, and it'll start with Keller. I think that's the key thing, right? If you've got a key player, you can do a lot of stuff, right? And Keller preseason, everybody likes him there. You got to like your chances if you're Columbia to make some noise in that. And Brandon, like you said, the conference hasn't done great out of conference so far this year, but I look at like Ridgevue, right? They played Middleton and lost by 14 points. And that's, I would say that's a good, there's no good losses. I get it. But they lost to Rocky Mountain by 14, again, a 5A school that is predicted to do well. And then they lost to Jerome, who is supposed to be one of the better 4A teams again this year. And that was a close one. And so I think Ridgevue might be right there. Of the teams right now that I've seen, I think Ridgevue is just on the cusp, and maybe they can take that next step as the season goes along and everything starts gelling for the Warhawks.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this league goes. I think everybody could beat up on each other as the season progresses. Let's move to 3A and the Snake River Valley Conference. The preseason poll looks like this: Homedale 1, Fruitland 2, McCall Donnelly 3, Payette 4, Weiser 5, Parma 6. To me, it's kind of split right down the middle. Homedale, Fruitland, McCall Donnelly, I think are all going to be pretty good. Payette, Weiser, Parma, maybe a step behind.
I think, Brandon, Homedale is going to be tough to beat. I saw them play multiple times last year. Their core is essentially the core of the football team, right? It is. It's the same guys. It's Jackson Dine, Mason Strong, Trenton Fisher, Sigmund Good. Omar Rios. These guys were all on the football team. And this is Homedale's time, I think. They have senior loaded team, right? This team made it to state last year. They did well at state. I believe, did they win the consolation? I feel like that they went the opposite way in the bracket. I can't remember off the top of my head. But regardless, they're a team that I think is going to make some noise this year. Not only in the district, but statewide. I think they're going to be very good. They've got the pieces. They can get it done. Jackson Dines was their point guard last year. He averaged 17 points a game, and I think he's going to just pick up where he left off. It's hard sometimes for these kids to go from basketball to from football to basketball, but these guys are going to do it, and I think that they're the ones to watch. McCall Donnelly has always been in the mix. Obviously, they've made a couple runs to the state championships over the last couple of years, and then, like you said, Fruitland. Those top three, I think there's a line between the top three and the bottom three. And those top three are going to be really good, but I really like this Homedale team.
Yeah, Homedale's got a lot of athletes that are all similarly sized, which means they're all interchangeable, right? They can all step outside and shoot. They can go inside and get a bucket. The one thing against Homedale is they don't have a ton of height. And so rebounding this year, and Coach Cam Long will tell you this, that rebounding has to be a team effort this year. We're going to need every varsity contributor to go get 3 to 4 rebounds per game for us to be able to compete against those taller teams on the glass. And so we'll see how Homedale adjusts to that as the season goes along. But it's not like a lot of other teams are tall either, right? Nolan Bauer of Fruitland was the big giant, and he's now graduated. So I think in this conference, Homedale is going to match up just fine. Fruitland is going to be led by Tyler Capps and Luke Baranega. Mark Van Weerthursen, longtime coach there for Fruitland. Tate Ova, top returning player for McCall Donnelly. And then Payette returns their entire starting 5 from last year, Logan. So what kind of work did they put into the offseason?
Yeah.
We'll have to see. I think one of the most underrated players, though, in the conference is Jaden Morin Bishop of Payette. I think he could do some really nice things this year.
And Payette, don't discount the power of the dome over there in Payette, the most interesting high school basketball gym in the state belongs to Payette. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Brandon. They have this. It almost looks like a. I can't even think. It's a little dome. It's like an observatory. One of those places you go and you look into outer space.
Yeah.
What do you call those?
Yeah, an observatory. Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like one of those. It's like a little domed feature, and it's a standalone thing separate from the school. It's an interesting little place. But regardless, like you said, you bring back everybody. You never know, right? What have they been doing? Those guys played together all last year. Now they're going to play together this year. You can only think there's only room to grow, right? And Payette, a team that is probably hungry. It's been a while from the Pirates since they've won something, taken something home. And I'm sure that town, that community, that school would love nothing more than to do that. And the basketball team has a great shot to hopefully for them get into that top 3 of the league and maybe punch a ticket to state.
Definitely. Parma's got a new coach, Trevor DeBure, who came from Compass Charter. I think he's gonna build that program up. You just got to give it some time out there in Parma. All right, 2A, Western Idaho Conference. Melba 1. This is the preseason coaches poll again. Melba 1, Coal Valley Christian 2, Ambrose 3, Nampa Christian 4, New Plymouth 5, Marsing 6, Compass Charter 7, North Star Charter 8. Melba, I think, well earned, the defending 2A champs, and they are still the favorites. 2 through 6, toss them in the bag and shake them up. Really, all of these teams have guys.
Yeah, Ambrose used to be right there, but I think you could have gone back and forth, right? You keep making an argument for Melba, you can make an argument for Ambrose, but I think this year we talk about tiers. There's Melba, and then there's everybody else. By the way, I got another shirt from Melba, which is awesome. I ordered it from their store. I've said this before. I'm a sucker for t-shirts. So if you guys have a store, let me know. I would love to buy something from your team store. But I bought myself a nice Melba shirt because they sent me the link for their store. That's not because I'm a Melba homer, but because they sent me the link. So if you see me around town with a Melba shirt, that's why. So again, send me your link and I'll get a shirt from your school. But Melba is just, they did lose a couple of guys, right? Well, mostly the guy and Joe Reber. But a lot of other guys are back. Graydon Volker's back, Cash Buse back. They won a state title a year ago. I don't see a reason they can't do it again this year. Of anybody in the SI or Southern Idaho, over here Treasure Valley, I think Owyhee has a great shot at winning a state championship, and I think Melba does. I think those are my two that I look at and say I would tentatively pencil them in to be playing Saturday at the Idaho Center in March.
Yeah, Volkers, Buse, Tucker Lober, Caden Daly, Gabe Schaefer, all back for Melba. There's a younger Buse, Cutter Buse is I guess he's the same year as Cash. They're both juniors, but he's kind of a newcomer to varsity, Cutter Buse. And Coach Spencer Trappett of Melba's got a very good thing developing there. I still kind of like Ambrose. Tyson Hughes is back. The younger Sugarman, Eli Sugarman, is still there.
Right.
For Ambrose. Coal Valley Christian's just got athletes, right? They've just got dynamic athletes. Nampa Christian lost a lot. That's the big question. They lost almost their entire varsity production, plus their coach. Daniel Jenkins, the football coach, is also going to be coaching basketball at Nampa Christian. New Plymouth, Jeff Lavender always has, a well-coached scheme and team to where, he loses guys to graduation, but he just plugs in the next batch. Connor Hawker, a guy to keep an eye on for New Plymouth. Tim Little at Marsing, I think, has a chance to break into the upper half of the league. Compass Charter, North Star Charter, both kind of rebuilding. North Star Charter especially, this is their first year in 2A competition, but it'll be interesting to see how those guys do as the season goes along as well. All right, Logan, are you ready for the wildest conference there is? We always talk about this in every prediction we do. The Western Idaho Conference for 1A D1, 11 teams in this league. Victory Charter was picked as the preseason favorite. Liberty Charter second, Rimrock third, Notice 4, Riverstone 5, Vision Charter 6, Idaho City 7, Centennial Baptist 8, Greenleaf Friends 9, Wilder 10, Gem State 11. To me, it's kind of a top three: Victory Charter, Liberty Charter, Rimrock. Those are the three teams that I expect to be competing for those bids to state. We did this classification last year at state, Logan, and it was Rimrock and it was Liberty Charter that ended up getting to state. I remember Rimrock got a win over Liberty Charter on the consolation side of the bracket, and they erupted. I think it had been the first win maybe ever for Rimrock at state in boys basketball.
Yeah, it had been a long time for them, and they showed up. They were one of the best traveling fan bases. Obviously, you don't have to travel very far, but they had a ton of people there, did Rimrock. And so look for them. I mean, they did lose a few pieces from that team a year ago, but you know what? You just never know what can happen when you get to the district tournament and how that's going to shake out. Because we didn't see Victory Charter there, and everybody kind of expected to see them there at the state tournament, and they were not. You know, they got upset in the district tournament, and they didn't make it. So you just never know. What's always so tough about this classification, though, is that while you may do great in districts, there's always this lurking beast up north in Lapway that no matter what happens, you got to deal with Lapway at the end of the season, which can be fun, right? You got a big beast that you want to try and take down, and somebody's going to fight for the right to hopefully play Lapway is how I see it.
Yeah, and it's not just Lapway, but you know the White Pine League. You know, it was an all White Pine final last year with Camii. Camii also is going to be very good again from the north. Yes, so Rimrock lost a lot, right? Gus Black was a personal favorite of ours, watching him compete for Rimrock last year.
Yeah,
they do bring back Aiden Akiso. Liberty Charter had the player of the year in Dallin Criddle, and we saw what he could do night in, night out, but he's gone. The consensus seems to be now that Noah Palomares of Victory Charter is going to be the new Dallin Criddle. And you can't compare the two guys, but he's going to be the guy that's putting up, 25, 30 on any given night, and probably going to be the conference player of the year at Victory Charter. So
yeah, I'm curious to see how Liberty Charter adjusts to not having Criddle. I mean, he wasn't the entire offense, obviously, but he could do it all, right? He was big. He could go down low. I mean, we saw him dunk once in a game, and he could shoot it outside. He could drive it. He could do all those things. He was the Swiss Army knife, right, for Liberty Charter. And when you lose a key player like that, you got to have other guys that are going to step up. And who's going to step up for Liberty Charter, who seems to consistently make state tournaments, right, from the conference? And so who's going to step up for the Patriots? That'll be a big question in the conference. And it is a big question, because if somebody does not step up and Liberty Charter takes that step down, who's the other team that steps into that top three, right? If that's my biggest worry with them, is if they don't have that, who is it? Is it a Notice? Is it a Riverstone? I guess we'll just have to find out and see. But I think something tells me it won't be a problem for Liberty Charter, that they'll find a way to replace their Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, there's a lot of new coaches in this league this year, including that Victory Charter, Dave Weaver, first-year head coach. Liberty Charter is the opposite. Seth Stalkop has been the coach there for 15 seasons now, and they're going to be led by Luke Thomas and company. I think Liberty Charter is going to be good because Coach Stalkop brings some stability in that system. When you look at the other new coaches, you've got new coaches at Centennial Baptist in Brent Mai. That's a team I heard a lot of buzz about. Maybe, as a sleeper, is Centennial Baptist. Idaho City has a new basketball coach, Al Hansen. He's also the new athletic director there. Riverstone brings back their second-year head coach and Steve Bowen. They're another team that could break through. Notice has the athletes, Benny Guevara, Tristan Aspiazu, guys we recognize from football season for Notice. How will they do on the basketball court under a new head coach in Jim Boder? Vision Charter is brand new to the conference. This thing is wide open. There's a lot of good athletes. But again, I think it's still those three at the top. And then anything else, we'll buckle up and wait and see. Let's go to finally the Long Pin Conference in 1A D2, where in the preseason coaches poll, Cascade just edged out Council, but those are kind of the two overwhelming favorites. The ballots we got were kind of split between Cascade and Council. I was talking to Cascade head coach Josh Hurley, And he said his guys were pretty fired up that they were the number one team in the preseason coaches poll. They're pretty excited down there in Cascade about what the Ramblers have this year. He said it's good motivation for his team as well, though, to keep that number one spot throughout the season.
Yeah, Cascade, a team that is dangerous, right? They went to the state tournament last year, made a run at districts, and got that bid. 3 years ago, I believe it was, they made a run to the state championship game. Actually, they beat Cary in the first round, and they beat North Gym in the second round and earned a trip to state. They, ended up having to play a tough Lakeside team that won that championship. That was a completely loaded squad, but they made a run, right? And they were a good team, and they're back this year. They've got some good pieces. They already have a couple of big wins, right? Cascade does. They're already off. They're undefeated this year. They've beaten Centennial Baptist a couple of times. They beat Greenleaf, and those were resounding victories in all of those. And so right on the surface level, you say, Cascade's checking out at least so far, right? Council, a team that, the girls have done well for so long. The football team did well, and they're fresh off of a win last week against Notice, a team that you just talked about that had a bunch of athletes. And so Council may be a team that can make some more noise this year. And then you've always got the one lurking in the back, that's Garden Valley. They seem to just always be good at everything. Of course, this is their second year without their, fantastic squad that they had from a couple seasons ago. And so have they, gotten their feet underneath them again after recovering from losing such tremendous players at Garden Valley.
Yeah, Heather Kelly is the head coach at Garden Valley. Tacoma Kelly is kind of the lead dog there for the Wolverines. They've had a lot of games postponed due to inclement weather. They had a lot scheduled last week that got wiped out by bad road conditions and whatnot. Logan, we're recording this on Tuesday, December 6th. Tomorrow night, Wednesday, December 7th, we're going to find out real quick how this conference shakes out as Cascade hosts Council. What an early season matchup that's going to be. Conference opener for both teams.
Yeah, that's a brutal way to open your conference schedule, but you know what? It's a fun way to open it, right? When you've got a big game like that, and it should be interesting. It's going to set the tone, right? They're not going to play again until January 19th. So you're going to have a month and a half to stew on this, right, if you lose. And probably a month and a half of looking above you in the schedules and seeing the other team, or in the standings, and seeing the other team above you. So you definitely want to win that game. And I think it's going to tell us a lot, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a matchup where you see the home teams win on their own home courts, right? Where it's going to be that type of matchup, a back and forth affair. So interesting to see how it shakes up. Hopefully the roads stay good so that matchup can happen, because that can be a problem for the conference.
Definitely. Cascade led by Tyler Thurston, Samuel Huckabee, Cole Olson, and company. Council led by Wyatt Vining, who I feel like has been there for 10 years, but he's a senior. Josh Geip as well for Council. So yes, Cascade 1, Council 2, Garden Valley 3. I think that's the clear top 3. Then there's a small line. Tri-Valley was picked 4th, Horseshoe Bend 5th, Meadows Valley 6th, Salmon River 7th. There's been one conference game, Logan. It was played last night between Tri-Valley and Salmon River. Tri-Valley emerged with a very tight win, 56-53, a one-possession game. Zane Nichols balled out for Tri-Valley. I think that's an indicator of how close the conference could be this year.
Yeah, it would be great to see it be like this, night in and night out, right? Well, at these nice battles between these two schools, or not. Well, that was a great battle between those two, but to see it go on for the rest of the conference, I mean, if that's any indication of how it's going to go, it should be a fun season.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun as we break down basketball all throughout the year. That is our boys basketball preview extravaganza. Next week, we'll go back into the regular formula of, hey, we're going to talk about a couple of things that stood out to us across the entire sports landscape: girls basketball, boys basketball, wrestling. And again, if there's a story, a team, an athlete you want us to talk about, feel free to send us an email, Brandon@IdahoSports.com, Logan@IdahoSports.com. And that's what we're all about, is shining the spotlight on some of these great athletes.
Yeah. We want to get them as much publicity as we can. Also, if you're reading you can see these previews online, right? Everybody, you can go and read these things we've been talking about. Every team has a preview. If you notice on every preview, you might see a little banner up at the top that is a business that supports the school that you root for, whatever. If you would like one of those, you can also just email us. Just email Logan at IdahoSports.com and we can get you set up with one of those as well.
Yep. So it's all on our website, IdahoSports.com. We are getting more and more boys basketball previews posted. By the middle of the week, they should all be up, and we'll have it smack dab for you on the homepage. Great wrestling content as well. We're rolling out our wrestling previews, classification by classification today. And friendly reminder for all the wrestling fans, we have a special wrestling-only podcast through the winter, the Matt Chat Prepcast, first episode live tonight, 8 p.m. Mountain Time. You can join us on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account. And then you can also just listen to the podcast the following day as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thanks for tuning in. Oh, go ahead, Logan.
No, just going to say, ready to get going with basketball. There's a ton of tournaments over the next couple of weeks, so might see some interesting results out of teams, might see some upsets. They're always fun. Something always unexpected happens in these early season tournaments.
Yeah, we should mention that real quick. The small school showcase is coming up this Saturday. Mountain View is hosting the boys tournament. And is this the first time ever there's going to be a girls small school showcase at Timberline?
I think so. Because I don't think I'd ever heard of it happening before, to be honest. And so I don't think they've done that before. So this will be the first year for that.
Yeah. If we look at the schedule, I have the official schedule for the boys. I haven't gotten an official schedule for the girls yet, but there's going to be some really good competitions. The matchups for the boys side, the small school showcase, this is all day Saturday at Mountain View. If you're looking for something fun to do, like go park your butt at Mountain View all day. It starts at 8:30 a.m. is the first game, Logan. The last game of the night is at 8:30 p.m. So you're talking about more than 12 hours of coverage, 10 games. You've got Garden Valley against Riverstone, Liberty Charter against Dietrich, Shoshone against Wilder, Lighthouse Christian against Marsing, Horseshoe Bend against Rockland, Richfield against Council, North Star Charter against Camas County, Compass Charter against Hanson, and Cascade against Victory Charter. So every single game features at least one and sometimes two teams from District 3.
I mean, two games to look at, Cascade, Victory Charter, right? That might be the best game of the day. And then Liberty Charter and Dietrich. I think those two, I don't think you can miss those, right? Those are going to be two really good games. Those two are going to be, those four teams are probably going to be at state this year.
Yes, and they're on opposite ends of the schedule. Liberty Charter Dietrich will be at 10 a.m. Cascade Victory Charter, the nightcap at 8:30 p.m. And then one more game I would say is Richfield and Council. Ridgefield is kind of a team that's expected to make some noise maybe in their district this year as well at the D2 level. And on the girls' side, we talked about, I don't have the official schedule. I can tell you who's going to be competing. Liberty Charter, Camas County, Raft River, Cary will be there. Rimrock will be there. Tri-Valley is going to be competing. So there's going to be Shoshone, Lighthouse Christian. There's going to be some really good girls matchups.
Yeah.
There's also the annual Raleigh-Lincoln tournament taking place this weekend at Wilder, Logan, for girls basketball as well. This is an annual tournament that Wilder does every year. They host a girls tournament, and then the next weekend they will host a boys tournament. It is named in honor of Raleigh-Lincoln. He was the longtime announcer at Wilder. He started keeping stats for boys and girls basketball in the 1972-73 season. And he kept the stats every year for Wilder. So they've got pretty good detailed record books because of Raleigh-Lincoln. And then he was the announcer for all the games from the 1978-79 season all the way up to 2007-08. And he also announced 30 seasons of football for Wilder as well. So a true icon.
All right.
Raleigh-Lincoln tournament in Wilder the next 2 weekends. So.
Yeah, lots of fun tournaments around. And like you mentioned, I mean, that small school showcase is going to have a couple of, really good games in it. So definitely worth the watch.
Definitely. All right. Well, we will talk about what happened at the Small School Showcase and the Raleigh Lincoln Tournament and all the other big stories on another edition of the Treasure Valley Prepcast next week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. For Logan Green, I'm Brandon Baney, and we'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.